In what ways did your accident impact not only you, but your family and your support system? And I appreciated when we were kind of talking to prepare for this conversation, you kind of gave me something else to be thinking about that I hadn't really thought about, how when someone experiences a disability, how that affects the family. So I'm curious from your perspective, what were some ways that the community did support you or could have better supported you around your experience, but also maybe for folks who are living in communities where your neighbor or your friend, or not, how do we expand our thinking to support families and support networks?
So it was 1977, and I won't make a long story out of it, but it's important to give context that, in those days, there wasn't a manual or something online for my parents to look up on how do I raise a child that just lost both hands and elbows, right? So community was very important in terms of support, and it still is today, but that's all they had to lean on. I had an electrical accident. So it was a very traumatic accident after touching 27,000 volts. So small town kid, I was supported through the newspaper. So I was often followed. So there was a dubious celebrity to my injury and who I had become as an amputee and a crippled or handicapped child. And that was the language that was used. After a 100-day stay in a burn unit, I was off to the Ontario Crippled Children's Center. So again, that backdrop or that context of, you talked about ableism and how people with disabilities were perceived with not a lot of value, a lot of pity. I mean, it was obviously a very difficult time for me and my family. And to answer your question, it was very hard on my mother, of course. And I think today we still see some of that residual trauma that she experienced over many years, not just within that accident time. And I often tell the story of, where maybe my mom was with my younger brother and sister. I was 11 when I had my accident. So my brother was 7 and my sister 5, so quite young. Into town they would go, and they're suffering and struggling too. My parents had to dedicate so much attention to me, and they'd be asked not how are they doing, but how's your brother? How's Jeff? How's he coming? So the attention was never on them, which kids need, right? It was always focused on me, and honestly, resentment did come to a boil at different points in our lives until we were old enough and mature enough to understand what was going on at that time when we didn't.